You'll never be rich. And here's why. There's a lot of finance influencers talking about get rich quick schemes, invest in this and 10x your money. But the painful truth is that most of it is BS. It's rare to achieve wealth overnight, and it's exactly this get rich quick mindset that'll make you get poor quick. Sure, some lucky few can be millionaires overnight, but not many of them can actually keep their wealth. I bet you didn't know, 78% of pro NFL athletes who all of a sudden start making tens of millions of dollars will actually file for bankruptcy 2 years after they retire. It's because they're missing this one foundational thing that's required to build and maintain wealth. And without it, will make all this very challenging. So let's talk about what it is and how to get it so you can start tasting the sweet nectar of financial freedom. Growing up, my family never had much money. My parents immigrated to the US with nothing but a couple of dollars, some shirts and pants. They didn't speak any English, didn't have a high school degree, and didn't know anyone in the States. But they did experience something life-changing back in China that they remember to this day. They grew up in extreme poverty. My dad would tell me stories of the food rationing system that he lived through. Decades ago, China couldn't produce enough food or clothes or anything, so each family received a monthly ration coupon so that they could exchange it for food or clothes. The coupon was only the opportunity to buy something. You also needed money, which they didn't have much of. And even if you did have both money and the coupon, my parents still didn't have enough food because the ration coupons only allowed you to buy enough food to prevent you from starving, but never enough to actually make you full. By the time I was born, I wasn't raised in poverty. We were a lower middle class, but what was really interesting was that my parents' mind, they didn't get programmed in the way that many of us fall victim to. Despite them coming from poverty, my parents were more concerned about the long term, their children's legacy over themselves. They didn't try to impress anyone with jewelry, fancy cars, or clothes. None of that. They would wear the same clothes for years, and I think my mom still has clothes from 20 to 30 years ago. I remember that my mom would intentionally buy me clothes that were way too big for me. Like if I was a size small, she would get me a medium because she says that I'll grow into it. And of course I was embarrassed when I walked into class with my oversized clothes, and I saw all my classmates with really cool book bags, new shoes, and here I was. But as I got older, I realized what my parents did for me. They taught me a really strong foundation that prevented the specific type of programming that so many people succumb to. But to be clear, my parents didn't teach me everything I needed to know about personal finance. That's why I read books, watched videos, and read articles that revealed this phenomenon that I'm going to share with you that most finance influencers do not talk about. Society brainwashed us into thinking that becoming wealthy is only about taking action. That if you take enough risk, buy the next crazy hyped up stock, then you'll be a millionaire. But that's just wrong. Having the right mindset is equally as important as taking action. A study from Stanford by psychologist Carol Dweck, she conducted an experiment with 12,000 ninth graders. And these students were randomly assigned to complete either a 50-minute program that taught them about the growth mindset or complete an unrelated 50-minute course. And the results were shocking. Maybe, you probably already guessed it, but the students that took the growth mindset course earned significantly higher grades than those who didn't, which indicated that mindset played an important role in development and in improvement. Buddha once said that the mind is everything. What you think, you become. But that's bullcrap too. Yes, mindset is important, but remember, so is action. I'm not here to tell you that just because if you think about something, then it's automatically going to happen. You also need to take the appropriate steps to achieve your goal, which I'll talk more about later. One big reason that you'll never be wealthy is that you and most people you know, we're all programmed to be poor from the moment that we were born and every waking day since. Now, I don't mean poor as in living in extreme poverty. If you're living in the United States, you're objectively not poor compared to the rest of the world. But I am talking about your way of thinking. The poverty mindset, where your thoughts and feelings are aligned with poverty, which makes it more challenging to attain and maintain wealth. The poverty mindset is the fear that you will never have enough. It convinces you that your circumstances will never improve, and therefore traps you in this endless cycle. Again, it's not necessarily that you don't have money, but it's rather how you perceive your financial reality. Think back to when you were a kid. How many times have you heard your parents say, "We can't afford it, we can't do that, we can't do this"? Sometimes it's reasonable, but oftentimes it's too easy words that we default to because it makes it so you don't have to think about the issue anymore. Because you said it yourself, there's no alternative path. The consequence of this is that you subconsciously submit to defeat. And chances are you also adopted this language from your parents. Beyond just our parental upbringing, also think back about our education system, which is modeled off these things called factory schools, which were first created during the Industrial Revolution to produce compliant, literate, and timely workers who did exactly what they were told. And you can look this up too if you don't believe me. We're still using the same exact factory school model over 200 years later, and the outcome is the same: to produce the same types of people. Workers straight from school who are taught to play the game of life by thinking inside the box, to avoid mistakes and failures, to put their heads down, join the rat race, and try to climb the corporate ladder. This is the reality that many of us were programmed with, this poverty mindset. But there is a way out. Here are some actionable steps to take that will make a really big difference. But first, if you're enjoying this video and you want to learn more about personal finance and self-improvement, I'd appreciate if you subscribe and turn the like button into a beautiful black, because that really helps out the channel. How many of us can actually say that we learned about personal finance in school? I'm betting 0. And if you did, comment below, because I'd love to hear where you're actually from. So that means that most of us learned our financial habits from our parents. If they weren't good with money, then chances are you aren't either. And this brings us back to the language of we can't. We can't afford this, we can't afford that. The language that shuts off your mind. But here's the trick to unlock it again, and it's simply by adding a single word. Instead of saying I can't afford it, ask how can I afford it? It's a very subtle difference in wording, but by asking the question, it opens up the brain and forces you to search for creative answers and opportunities. Now, the point of this wording change isn't to necessarily achieve the goal now or tomorrow. The point is to change your usual mental response from doubt to belief so that you can try to think of ways to solve the problem. Now, I want you to think back to when you were younger. How did you come up with your career choice or decide how you'll earn money in the future? It was probably thinking along the lines of, what is something that you can do really, really well that people will pay for? Now, that's generally how we all come up with our stereotypical professions that our parents wanted us to be. If you're good at science, doctor. If you're good at math, engineer. Good at English, lawyer. Society taught us to pick some skills that we're good at, master it, and then people will pay us for it. To be clear, it's not a wrong way of thinking. That's generally how 90% of the world functions. It's what these factory schools wanted us to think. But this way of thinking also limits us by creating a ceiling where two things will happen. First, since you're the one performing the skills, you're limited by the number of hours that you can work. 24 hours in a day, assuming you don't need to sleep or eat. Second, there is a limit to how much someone will pay for your skills. If you're a super specialized neurosurgeon, sure, you might be able to make, let's say, $3,000 an hour. But eventually you hit a ceiling because the market won't pay a higher price. Generally, this is fine for most people, but here's a trick to actually speed up your path to being rich. Instead of thinking inside the box, try changing your mindset to be more innovative and entrepreneurial. Instead of thinking, what is something that you can do really well that many people will pay for, start thinking, what is something that many people need and what can you create? What value can you provide that will fulfill that need? It's a very nuanced difference where instead of you directly trading your individual person, your time in exchange for money, you start thinking about scalability. How can you easily create one thing that will provide more value to more people? This next one is going to completely blow your mind because it goes against everything you've ever been taught. And it's simply stop working hard. When you work hard for the sake of working hard, you're not necessarily accomplishing more. For the most part, you're just doing busy work. You're still a cog in a machine, just a busy cog now. It shows that you're dedicated to your employer, sure, but it doesn't really show your worth. A cog does all the work that's needed to keep the machine running. But here's the painful truth. You can always be replaced by another cog. So instead of trying to be a cog that runs well, be the machine itself. Work hard and break the mold. People with the poverty mindset, they always follow the rules. They join the rat race, they put their head down, they do the required work, minimize their mistakes, and hope that they'll be recognized in a sea of millions who are doing the exact same thing, and hope that one day they'll be paid fairly for how hard they work. But this fair exchange rarely ever happens. Let me ask you, do you believe that your earnings or your income is related to how hard you work? Do you really think that CEOs who earn 351 times more than the typical worker really works 351 times harder? If you want to escape this poverty mindset and achieve success, take what you want. Break the rules. Do something that makes you irreplaceable and very, very valuable to your employer. If you have a brilliant business idea, make it happen. Ignore anyone who says that that's a silly goal, because chances are they're still a cog in a machine when you're trying to be the machine. We were born into an unfair world where we all start with different advantages and disadvantages in life, whether because it's of geographic location, socioeconomic class, or our physical appearance. And yes, I'm all for improving the system for the future generation, but that's gonna take centuries of hard work. And chances are you'll be gone by then. Always fight the good fight. But the second best thing that you can do now is improve your own circumstances, gain the knowledge, change your mindset, and pass it on to the next generation so they can start off with a better chance. Now, I'm not pretending like I'm perfect or I cracked the secret code to wealth. I'm far from it. These are only some of the strategies that I've used to improve my wealth mindset, and I'm still learning more every single day that I can't wait to share with you guys on this channel. But remember, it goes beyond just belief and mindset. Your actions need to back it up too. If they don't, then nothing will change. You need to actively rewire your subconscious understanding of money and personal finance, and it starts by getting to the core foundation of it. And this video is the best place to start. Learning how to manage your money like the 1% is going to teach you the most important strategies to build wealth that the super wealthy uses and you probably never heard of before.